All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 21, also known as Episode 132 of the Retro Game Club podcast. I'm Hugh, and joining me is someone now owned by Fandom, Rob.
Yeah, and management is already trying to entice me to give only good reviews on Glassdoor.
Yes. and you're now covered in ads.
Yeah, and I will soon be laid off probably.
Yes.
Yeah, who did they bought? What was it? Red something? Whoever owned like Giant Bomb and Zelda Wikia apparently.
Yeah, they owned Zelda Wikia for a while, and it went from being what I thought was a really awesome site to a really awful site.
To SourceForge.
Right. And same with Wikipedia. You definitely have used Wikipedia.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That's another one Fandom bought and just turned into a giant ad portal. So now they own GameFAQs. So that will be a giant ad portal before long, I assume. I don't know. I have a couple. I've actually posted a few things on GameFAQs over the years, but they're things that are also already on my website. So I guess if that site completely falls apart and you really need a walkthrough for it came from the desert on TurboGrafx 16 CD, I think at least 2 people have read it. It'll still be on my site.
Well,
rest assured.
Yeah, I went to Phantom's Glassdoor this morning, and there's like a ton of like glowing reviews that happened all at once, and then there's a few right around that same time that gave them like 0 stars. That was like, do not listen to any reviews around this time. Management did ask us to, write only good reviews, which
nice.
not.
I would ask that of our listeners too.
Yes. And we in fact do that. That's funny. Yeah. Speaking of which, listeners on Glassdoor only give the Retro Game Club podcast good reviews. We need to get on Glassdoor.
I did leave a Glassdoor review of one company I worked at, and it wasn't bad. It was just honest.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really been worried that someone would go back, look at it, and decide not to hire me because I gave, a fairly honest review of a company. It's not like I gave them 0 stars. It's like, well, here's some good things about working there, and here's some not good things about working there.
Exactly. Yeah. I think I've done that a few times too. We haven't recorded in like a month. What's been going on?
Let's see. Well, game-wise, I've mostly been playing Trails from Zero, which is, the part of the Legend of Heroes series that finally came out in the US. I'm at the end of chapter 3. I think there are 5 chapters, but it's a Falcom game, so the 5th chapter will probably have a dungeon that's like the size of the entire game. That seems to be a thing they like to do. But I'm enjoying it overall. It's really, really good game. The Switch port is very good. I don't think I've been playing a lot else. I did give away a copy of Next Step to just a totally random person on the internet. Did I mention this?
Like the operating system?
Yeah, the operating system.
Nice.
Yeah. So I had I had 2 boxed copies of Next Step. I worked in an office building that like the previous tenant must have been doing something with Next Step because like in one storage closet they just had these boxed copies of Next Step. So most of them got thrown out. I took 2 home. I put one on eBay. Maybe I shouldn't admit to that part, but it didn't really get very much. Like, it's the kind of thing where people listed on eBay for like $200, but in reality, people aren't really paying anywhere close to that.
Yeah.
So for the other one, I just Googled like Next Step fan site. And the first site that came up, I emailed that guy and said, do you want this for the cost of shipping? And he said, yes.
That's awesome.
So that was that. And there's a few other things that I have a few other things that are just taking up space I may do the same with. So that was kind of fun. That's about it. What have you been up to?
Oh man, we the family went to California. We went to Disneyland. We did not get to see Zach. He was traveling at this time, and the dates just did not work out. But probably next time. We really enjoy California, and we'll go back out there as soon as possible. But I really liked Malibu.
Okay.
I guess I'm old and boring, so the only missing ingredient there is rich. So I just need to fix that part. I could live in Malibu. But
yeah.
Disneyland, good time, not relaxing. What are the highlights? The Star Wars stuff is just incredible. If I lived out there, when I retire, I just want to Say like, I just want to be a character in the Star Wars area. Pay me and I will like be a, target welcomer and in the Star Wars area, Some of the Marvel stuff was cool, like the web slinger stuff was cool. One of the most October Halloween-y things that could possibly ever happened to us, where we got stuck in the Haunted Mansion.
Oh, I had that happen to me too. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, except it was like 10 minutes we were stuck in there before they fixed it. And I was with my daughter in one of the, what do you call those things? In the rides, I guess, a cart? What do you call it? Yeah, a pod. I don't know. And then my wife and my son were in the other one. And we were both stuck right next to the bodiless fortune teller, like the head that's in the crystal ball.
Yeah, yeah.
So we got to hear her say her thing, 100 times. But they fixed that. No one was too frightened. And we were on the Monsters, Inc. ride, and that broke to a point where they had to come and walk us off. So they turned on all the lights. So we kind of got to see how the sausage was made in there, but they were like, absolutely no photos and yada, yada, yada. It was really strange. And then the Indiana Jones ride broke right before we got on, and they had to get people off with ladders.
Oh, that's scary.
Yeah. But I think it was just kind of a lot of bad luck with the broken stuff.
Well, Haunted Mansion might not have been broken. So when we got stuck on it, I assume I'm into the Florida one. I assume the California one works the same. It's a continuous loop, right? Like the ride, it doesn't stop, let people on and off, right? It's just a continuous circle going.
Yeah.
So if you have someone who's like in a wheelchair or requires assistance to get on the ride, they have to pause the ride.
Oh no, they announced this. They got on the loudspeaker. Okay. Oh yeah. I think they were getting ready to get us off, but
Oh, okay. Yeah, I had when we were on, it was definitely like there's a group that needs assistance, which is fine. We were actually stuck part where you're like kind of going up, so I was laying back the entire time. It was actually kind of relaxing.
Yeah, kind of take a little break from running around because oh my goodness, did you have to deal with like the Genie Plus Pass and lightning lanes and all that stuff?
It was a different system last time we went. We went before. Last time we went would have been 2018 because 2019 we did Universal.
Mm-hmm.
My kids were just getting too old for Disney stuff mostly anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And that was where you had the wristband. And then there was some system where you could like on your phone reserve fast passes to your wristband. My wife figured the system out and like, I just remember we would like, get off one ride and it's just like, hey, if you want to ride that, if you liked Soarin', we can go on it again right now.
Yep.
With no wait. It's like, all right.
Yeah. And we stayed at a hotel that, since we were on the property, we could get in an hour early. So you get in like 6 rides before anyone else is there. And
Universal works kind of the same way too.
That's all. Yeah. And so great time. Definitely not relaxing, but the rest of the trip was pretty relaxing. And I'm trying to think what else has been going on. I got the I forget if I talked about how I really got the Steam Deck modded. I actually went with Batocera instead of EMU Deck. So EMU Deck is pretty much like it loads RetroArch into Steam. You see the cores, the libretto cores in there. And you actually see your games in there, so you can just click on the game. But with Batocera, you just boot into the SD drive and you're in RetroArch. And I like that way better. I like the separation of it. And it's working great. I finally got Wii U working, PS2, everything. And it's just awesome. What else? Oh, the last thing is I've finally been diving into C++. Have you ever had to code in C++?
Well, yeah. I mean, in college, we did C++, and my first programming job, I did Visual C++.
Okay, well, I think that's a little bit different because, correct me if I'm wrong, because I know in Visual Basic, if you're coding in Visual Basic, you're pretty much coding in the IDE of Visual Basic. Is Visual C++ the same way, or were you just in Visual Studio?
It's a language. I mean, Visual C++, my experience was it's more about learning Win32 APIs.
Yeah, yeah.
You spend most of your time learning that, and then just understanding how C++ work, how data structures work.
Mhm.
Um,
The,
so
for me, I'm coding in VS Code as the IDE, and getting
yeah,
the language isn't difficult for me, really. It's the everything else, the making sure your IDE is playing nice so you get the autocomplete and the right error debugging and stuff like that. So if there's any listeners that are C++ gurus, give me a shout. I may have a few questions for you instead of dealing with the Stack Overflow. I don't know. People are really mean on Stack Overflow. Like it's a site where you're supposed to ask questions, but if you ask a question, you're apparently an idiot.
yeah, but they also deal with a lot of dumb questions, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Because I think they get a lot of questions where there's this tech article of, like, how to ask questions the right way, and a lot of it is like, you should explain everything you tried already first.
Yeah.
It can't be like, how do I create string in C++, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's going to get you mocked.
Yeah.
So that's probably part of it. You definitely won't be able to submit to the Linux kernel, because Linus Torvalds has a very strong hatred of C++.
Oh, yeah. He is not a fan. Yeah. But hopefully the app I'm writing in it will be out shortly. So I will have the story of that app eventually. But just so all our listeners know, we're not going to we decided last time we're not going to do news this time, just because we figured it'd be a long episode of the Sega CD turning 30. So we get to skip news this time and kind of load it up next time. Do we want to dive into some Sega CD?
Yeah. So Sega CD turned 30 a couple days ago. October 15th apparently is the real date. I didn't write it down in my personal logs, but that is the date according to Wikipedia, so I believe it.
So yeah, we have a bunch of boring stuff. We'll rattle through here first. Like you said, October 15th, 1992. We tried to record this episode then, but we were both extremely busy and traveling, and discontinued on Jan 1st, 1996, which January 1st is never a business date. So I think they're just guessing when it was discontinued.
Yeah. So I go by what was the last new game made for the system.
Mm-hmm.
So like, here's the example, like Google Stadia is officially being discontinued January 23rd, but as of, I think it was September 22nd or 29th, something like that, you couldn't submit new games.
So that's pretty much it. Yeah.
That's when the system, to me, is dead.
Yeah.
The fact that you could still, transfer your Red Dead Redemption game off it until January, that doesn't really tell me it's a live system. So Sega CD, the last game would have been Surgical Strike in late 1995, although you probably could have purchased it in 1996. It didn't have any 1996 releases.
Okay. It did sell 2.24 million units, which I don't think is that bad for an add-on unit. It was 12.5 megahertz, 68,000 CPU, which is double the megahertz of the Genesis. It added a nice 6 megabits of RAM, which I don't know why Wikipedia listed this in megabits, but that's 750 kilobytes. And that RAM was for real programming pictures and sound. It does have a Mode 7 ASIC-like GPU chip. It's pretty much the same, except it can handle a few more objects than Mode 7. And then you had the Model 1, which was set on the bottom, the Model 2 that sat on the side, the CDX, which was like an all-in-one unit, which was really cool, kind of looked like a Walkman. And then these two weird Victor models and the Laser Active. Mm-hmm. I looked through some magazines from when it launched and then later. And from what I found, right when it was released, it got pretty good reviews, like overwhelmingly positive reviews. I wouldn't call them glowing, but hopeful reviews. And then near the end of its life, it got bad reviews because they didn't do enough with it, Yeah. And yeah, I guess we could go into You'll have a much better memory of it because I think you were working in a game store at the time, right?
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I was. Crazy to think how young I was at that time. Now, when you think back 30 years ago, I can believe it had positive early reviews just because no one really had anything to compare it to.
Mm-hmm.
Even like PC CD gaming was kind of a novelty and was super expensive.
Mm-hmm.
A PC CD-ROM kit at that point was like $500 because you had to buy a specific kind of sound card and a CD drive, and maybe you didn't have I don't say SCSI, but you didn't have like a card in your computer to hook that to. Like it was just a whole thing.
A Sound Blaster.
Sound Blaster, yeah, all the stuff. And early PC CD-ROM games were they weren't super impressive because they weren't very gamey, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like Myst is a beautiful game, but it's not the kind of thing that people think of. It's not Street Fighter, it's not an action game.
Yeah.
So I think like the initial impression was like, hey, here's a system that has all the can do all the things a PC CD-ROM can do, more or less. Obviously, it's not the same horsepower, but it's half the price, and the games are actually like action games.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to have like what you consider real, in quotes, video games.
Mortal Kombat and stuff like that. Yeah. NBA Jam.
Yeah. Yep. Did have NBA Jam and Mortal Kombat. I think I have those in my notes somewhere. I laugh because my opinions of those two are not particularly awesome. But yeah, I was working there when it launched. It's funny because when I wrote about it, I actually wrote November in this little article I wrote. So I'm thinking the system maybe launched in October, but game launches didn't work in the 90s like they work today.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was no midnight launch, and stuff didn't even necessarily show up like when something launched.
Yeah.
Like we were in the Chicago area, so we were a pretty major market, so we would get stuff early. But like if you were in, I'm not trying to pick on a city, but if you're in like Topeka, Kansas, you might not have gotten Sega CD till December.
Uh-huh.
Right? Because that's just the way the system launches worked back then. And the dates didn't mean, like, I remember the Atari Jaguar launch, and I put quotes around that too, was literally just we opened a box one day and there was an Atari Jaguar in it. like no lead up, nothing. And Sega CD worked kind of like that, which is probably why I wrote November for the launch in my recollection, because I think we didn't really get the system on day one. And I don't think most stores did either. I think if you were in New York City or in downtown Chicago or in LA, maybe you got it on October 15th.
Uh-huh.
But, that's just not the way it works. Of course, nowadays you still can't buy a system at launch either. So I guess it's really not that different.
I mean, the PS5's been out for 2 years and you still can't buy that.
Right. I went to Target. They sell a sign that says, for the safety of our associates, you can't buy this here.
Yes.
So that's awesome. That is just great. But yeah, I mean, I remember like the customer reaction to it was maybe trepidatious, for lack of a better word. Like at that point, the TurboGrafx 16 CD had been out for a while,
Mm-hmm.
right? That came out in like late '89, because if I recall correctly, and I was just working on a different article to confirm some of this. Like the TurboGrafx 16 came out basically the same day as the Sega Genesis in August 1989. Again, where you live depended on when you saw the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And the TurboGrafx CD came out like 2 months later in America. And, people saw that and they weren't, those things weren't flying off the shelves.
It was expensive.
It was very expensive, and the games were not really, like, for most people, they weren't awesome games. I thought they were awesome games, but
Yeah.
I'm obviously into weird games. So with the Sega CD, I think people were nervous about that. And the original pack-in games that came with it were like Soul Feast, which is a shooter. It's fine. I don't know how well people knew the game. But then Sherlock Holmes, which is one of the games, you could already see on the TurboGrafx and say, hey, wait a minute, I don't want
to read
with that.
Yeah.
And, and then some samplers and other things. And then like the other launch titles were like Sewer Shark and some of the Make My Video stuff. And I'm I'm lumping anything that came out in the first 2 months into launch titles. So they may not have been day one titles. But again, like I said, day one wasn't really a thing in 1992.
Yeah.
And I think people were initially kind of skeptical because of all the FMV games, which I like FMV games, and I think it's a great way to showcase the technology. I put somewhere in our notes that if this thing had launched with like Sonic CD, even if it wasn't the Sonic CD that we ended up getting, like this system would have been a much bigger hit if it just launched with something that was Sega branded. Like when I say it launched with the Sega brand, I mean like this is a mascot game. This is a thing I really like recognize.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
And it just didn't have that on day one, and I think that kind of hurt it. I know the first, I never owned the original model of Sega CD. I think it's kind of cooler looking. It looks more futuristic.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
But it had the mechanical tray, and obviously that is more prone to break, and it costs more money. So they ended up switching to the side attached one. I guess I don't know if I worded that correctly, which is what I assume everybody has.
Yeah, that's what I have. Yeah. It does not fit on any shelf.
The CDX.
None of my shelves
Have
are
you
wide
ever played a
enough.
CDX? Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying it'll never fit on any of my shelves. No, because I've seen them, but I've never owned one. But I've seen them in some retro stores and have held them.
Yeah. Yeah, the CDX was kind of a neat system too.
Could you put the 32X on the CDX?
You actually can. So here's the funny thing. The CDX says it's not compatible with the 32X, but the reason it says that is because they didn't get FCC clearance for it.
Oh,
it
weird.
Actually works.
Okay. So it fits and everything. Okay.
It'll work. It's just they tell you it won't. I believe the Master System adapter will not work though, because it doesn't contain a real Z80 in there.
Okay.
So I think that doesn't work.
I wonder if they'll ever make an SD card upgrade for the CDX. Literally take the only thing that's inside of it out.
You're right. That's a funny hack. Someone's got to be working on that.
Yeah.
I know, like you go to like the Ben Heck room at a game convention, something like that. You will see CDX projects there.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can use that as a basis for like a Sega with a integrated screen.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I still on I know this is like off topic, but like a couple of years ago, I got one of the GameCube screens, the thing that snaps onto the GameCube.
Mm-hmm.
And they made one for the slim model of PS1.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to find one of those so badly. I would have that here on my desk right here, and I could play like Final Fantasy VII while I was on boring conference calls.
Yeah.
I guess I could do that other ways too, but the experience is what I'm going. I'm going for the experience of
totally
having the real thing.
Yeah, tiny screen.
But anyways, yeah. So like, I like FMV games, and I thought they did some really innovative things with the early FMV games. I know people make fun of the Make My Video stuff, and I don't know, maybe this is like this sounds bad. Maybe it's a demographic thing. Like the average in 1992, if it was like Nirvana Make My Video, like the people buying Sega CD would have thought it was awesome.
Totally, yeah.
But it was Marky Mark and Criss Cross, and then later In Excess, and eventually, much later on, CNC Music Factory did one of those. So I think that might have been part of it. Is that there maybe wasn't the overlapping customer base between those.
Yeah.
I don't think Nirvana would have gone along with Make My Video idea, but it would have done. It would have been interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah, like a 9 Inch Nails one or something.
Oh yeah. That's one that there was. We did at one point get some weird 9 Inch Nails interactive CD-ROM thing. I don't remember what it was, or it might have just been like low quality videos or something. I gotta go look that up again. But it was not for Sega CD. So, my thing, like, I mean, I'm going to kind of mix kind of good and bad experiences with the Sega CD here. One of the things I think hurt the system was that so many of the games were just ports of Genesis games that often were worse than the Genesis version because of load times.
Mm-hmm.
So take like Mortal Kombat, for example. It was more or less identical to the Sega Genesis version, but there would be weird load times. Like when you're fighting Shang Tsung, right? Every time he does a transformation, the game pauses for 30 seconds.
While
because
fighting.
it has to load. It's loading the tiles, right, for the thing he's turning into.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
And I think most of the fatalities have a pause too, because they're loading the tile, which is weird. You would think like the Genesis, like maybe the Genesis version is loading the tiles too, but it's reading it off ROM.
Mm-hmm.
So it's instant. That's the problem. Like it looks a little bit better, has obviously like the arcade perfect music, but is just kind of annoying to play. And NBA Jam, like NBA Jam doesn't have like the flow of the game doesn't break, but you know, it's okay. So you have some video intermissions, that kind of stuff. It's not really a huge upgrade. And the other thing I note is that, you know, it didn't have enough Sega brands. Like there was a Sonic game, there's an Echo game, and a Joe Montana game, which is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
But it was missing Streets of Rage, which I think that we have an email about that somewhere. Didn't have a Shinobi game, and didn't have a proper like a Phantasy Star RPG on there.
I'm shocked. I mean, there was Lunar something. What was the
Lunar, yeah.
Yeah.
There were 2 Lunar games, yeah.
Are those any good? I haven't played those.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are both great. Yeah, I mean,
but
I was gonna write like my top 5 Sega CD game list, and like the 2 Lunar games would be in the top 5 for me, along with like Snatcher and I don't know what else. I don't know what would round out the top 5, but those would be 3 of them.
But your point is that there was no Phantasy Star. There was no mainstream RPG title, no Final Fantasy or something.
Right, mainstream. Yeah. I mean, I know Lunar today is pretty well regarded, but at the time that was kind of an unknown to people. And then the other side is like EA Sports. You know, EA Sports was really booming in this era, and they had NHL and FIFA soccer ports, but they did not have John Madden or PGA Golf on there.
Yeah,
and PGA Golf could have been gorgeous on the Sega CD. But the thing that I think is really positive is the system might have great depth, but it has very good breadth. Like there's at least one really good game in every genre on the Sega CD. And I just kind of listed a few here. Like if you like platformers, you know, Sonic CD is one of the best platformers of the era for sure.
Mm-hmm.
If you like sports games, NHL 94 is considered like the best. There's actually a fan community around NHL 94, and the Sega CD version in particular gets just a ton of praise from them. RPG, we just mentioned Lunar 1 and 2. For adventure games, there's a Monkey Island port that's really good, and there's Snatcher. There's also Rise of the Dragon. For shooters, there's Sylphied. I don't know if you ever played that, but that is a really, really good shooter. Fighting games, you got like Samurai Showdown and Eternal Champions. Racing, I wrote Jaguar XJ 220, which is I actually really like this game a lot. It was an early, I don't know if it was technically a launch game, but it was a cardboard box game. It's my way of remembering what was early.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like amazing soundtrack, a lot of different courses. You know, we already talked about FMV, so there's a lot there. You know, everyone knows that listens knows I think Night Trap is actually a good game. And then it has a few strategy games. It has Dune and Powermonger, are both pretty good strategy games. Powermonger was available on cartridge too, though, so that's another just sort of port. And then, of course, you know, whatever genre you call Dragon's Lair and Space Ace. What do you call those?
I have no idea.
Quick time event games?
Yeah, Simon Says, I guess. I don't know.
Something, yeah. But those are really good ports. Have you played either of those?
Oh, yeah. I have Dragon's Lair. I don't have Space Ace, I don't think. Yeah, I have to look. I have about 8 or 10 Sega CD games. I don't even know which ones they are. I got to go look. But
okay.
Have you ever played Popful Mail?
I was trying to figure out where to talk about that one, but I have, yeah.
That's one I've only seen videos of, and I've only recently learned about it. So that's one I want to dive into. It looks like an incredible side-scrolling platform game, right?
It is. It's a Falcom game. It's the only Falcom game on Sega CD. So it's from the era. I would compare it to like an easier version of East 3.
Okay.
It plays a lot like that. You're you, you're gonna have to download it illegally.
Is it like $1,000?
Yeah, it's like $1,000, and it's on that Sega CD 2 Mini, but it's in Japanese on there. They don't have the English release. It's some weird thing where there's a company called Working Designs that did a lot of ports. So they did the Lunar 1 and 2 port, and they did the Pop-O Mail port. And for whatever reason, when they made the Sega CD 2 Mini, they could not get the IP for these ports, so they only have the Japanese versions.
Weird.
I don't know the story. So what else did I put on here? I have some just total. Why don't you get to your thoughts and I'll go through my random notes.
Yeah, I mean, since you were kind of more in the scene, you were definitely in the scene more than I was at that time. I have less notes than you, but at that time I was a Turbo Duo fanboy, and Sega CD came out, and when I read about it, I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm totally going to switch over to this because Genesis is supposed to be better than TurboGrafx, even though anytime I played either, I always liked the TurboGrafx better. And it didn't do it for me. I liked the games on the Turbo Duo better. And it wasn't really till the PS1 till I stopped using my Turbo Duo. And I kind of regretted it at that point because I kind of like the Turbo Duo better than the PS1 too. I felt like there could have been some mind-blowing 32X CD games, and that just never happened. We could have gotten like a Symphony of the Night-like game. We could have gotten a Crash Bandicoot-like game, but that just never happened. And just the games I wanted to mention for it were, Final Fight, just a great port of that. Sonic CD, we'll talk about in a little bit. Corpse Killer, how do you describe that? It's like a first-person rail shooter, I guess you would call it, with a lot of FMV-type background, digitized sprites. Very fun, over-the-top game. Silpede, you mentioned, as a top-down shooter, which is one of the best top-down shooters, I think, with 3D sprites. Star Wars Rebel Assault is a fine game for an early 3D game. It's not the best, but if you like Star Wars, there's definitely worse things out there. BC Racers, there's a Genesis port of this as well. This just has, some better graphics, better sound. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I think it's boring. And then Spider-Man versus Kingpin, I wanted to mention. Some parts of this game are okay. The cutscenes are horrible. It's cool that they have them, but they're gimmicky. They remind me of the Zelda CDI animations.
Okay.
I never had a Sega CD back in the day. Like I said, I saw it and I just decided to stick with the Turbo Duo at the time. And none of my friends, maybe I had one or two tops that had it, but it was kind of a forgotten system to me until the early 2000s, when these things really dropped in price. I started scooping up some things here and there, but did you own one? I forget what you said. When did you get one?
I got one. Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to backtrack for one quick second. So you mentioned Spider-Man versus Kingpin. Great soundtrack on that game.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So over on, I should have mentioned this sooner, on Nerd Noise Radio, we just did an episode about soundtracks for Sega CD games, and this one was featured. As a matter of fact, we probably had to argue over who got to pick a track over from this game, because there's just no bad tracks on that soundtrack. Yeah,
other than in the cutscenes.
With other cutscenes, I suppose, yes. But no, I would have bought this. I don't remember exactly when, but it would have been. I definitely bought the side attached unit, and it would have been after the first major price drop. So whenever they dropped to like $150 or $130, whenever they dropped, maybe even $99, they dropped to. I didn't have a ton of money back then, but it would have been the first major price drop.
Would this have been when you were working in the game store?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Because I knew when the price dropped then, and I had access to really cheap Sega CD games.
Did you get a discount I don't know if we ever talked about this. Did you get a discount when you worked there?
No, you don't get this. You do not get discounts on hardware.
Because there's no markup.
on hardware.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then games you get it was like a 10% discount. It really wasn't.
That's not bad. That's not bad.
Yeah. But here's where you really got the discount. And I put this in my random notes. So our stores did not take, I worked there when game trade-in started. And we did not accept, the company policy was not to accept trade-ins on CD games. Maybe it's because the CDs are way easier to damage than the cartridge, or maybe because they didn't think they would resell, right? But we also didn't have individual SKUs for used games back then. They do now, of course. But back then there was literally one SKU called pre-owned Genesis game, and another SKU called pre-owned Super Nintendo game. And if someone brought in, a toaster, you could just slap a generic SKU on it and resell it, right?
Yeah.
We didn't do that. But if we had kind of regular customers, people that were in the store all the time, and they wanted to trade in some Sega CD games that were, in good condition, we would take them.
Oh, okay.
But it also meant that, we pay $7 for a game, and then we turn around and sell it. I think you're supposed to sell it for $15, unless there's a sort of a price guide of what you're supposed to turn around and sell it for. But maybe if you work in the store, you get it for $9.99. I'm just saying.
Nice. That's awesome.
I'm just saying, that's how I got Snatcher, a game that's $600 on eBay today.
Yeah.
Was one of our regulars finished it, asked if they could trade it in because they're not going to play it again. Flip that right around into my own collection.
Yeah.
Hey, look, the store still made a profit on that sale, right? At the end of the day, the store still made a $1 profit. So I don't really feel like I ripped off anybody in this transaction.
And it's not like Snatchers flying off the shelves back then. So
no. Sega CD. I mean, again, it was we had regulars, you knew who the Sega CD customers were.
And for retail stores, it's pick your battles. You're paying your staff minimum wage. It's the little things in life that matter. Let them have this win. Yep.
Yeah. And to me, again, the store did actually turn a profit. It's not like I turned around and sold it for the price we sold it for. So real quick, I have a few more notes. But when you were looking at old magazines, did you find the old magazine that had a preview of King's Quest V for Sega CD?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, there's 2 images of it.
That would have been a cool port.
Canceled.
Yeah.
It would have been a great port, yeah.
Yeah, that would have been perfect. Because, I mean, are there any? I mean, I know NES has King's Quest
5.
Yeah, that's 5, isn't it? That's so strange. That is definitely the worst port of that. But yeah, I'm trying to think if any other consoles really has a King's Quest.
Master System has King's Quest 1.
And again, it's not good. Interesting. Sorry, go on. What were the other things you wanted to
I just thought you'd find that interesting.
Yeah,
but that was one of the canceled games for it. With 1 hole or 2 hole screenshots on the internet, you can see. I have too many tabs open. Where is I? All right, so my other random thoughts were, of course, people will want to debate Sega CD versus TurboGrafx CD, and I think it's pointless. Put that in my notes. Sega CD cases themselves are the most fragile material on Earth.
Even at the time, you would buy them and they would already be broken.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I have occasionally found shrink wrapped Sega CD games in the wild, and the cases are broken inside the shrink wrap.
Yep,
it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
In the rest of the world, they used regular CD cases.
That makes sense.
But I guess again, it's America. I guess they think we want everything bigger.
Yeah, or we're just more likely to steal them, so make them bigger.
Maybe, yeah, it could be a 2. I don't know.
I mean, original PS1 came in the long box, and then finally they switched over.
I really don't know if it was loss prevention so much as people want stuff in big boxes here.
Yeah,
we like to make ludicrously big homes and the Big Mac and all that kind of stuff. We just like gearish big things here. That's what I think it's about. So I wrote down that I don't know, and I didn't really research what the top selling Sega CD game was. I'm sure it's trivial.
It's Sonic CD. It was number one.
It's Sonic CD. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. I would assume Joe Montana Football is probably high too, just because sports games sold really well back then.
Let me do a quick Google. Best selling Sega CD.
But maybe it didn't. I sort of assumed it would be a big selling one.
No, I can't find anything here. Anyway, carry on.
Yeah. I'm almost through my notes here. Zach asked, do we want to mention the CD backup RAM cart? So I own one of these.
They're cool.
This is because your Sega CD had an internal battery that was used to store save games. Mine is still good. My Turbo Duo internal battery died like 10 or 15 years ago. But the Sega CD internal battery I have somehow, by some miracle, still works.
That's amazing.
It came up because I don't remember what game. It was something we had in Game Club in the past year, where I went to play the Sega CD version, and it's like, I'm sorry, your save RAM is full. And I'm like, how's my save RAM full? That can't be good.
Yeah.
How is that even possible? And it turns out the save RAM was so full.
Wow.
But this was a cart that just let you copy things between the console and this backup cartridge, which had, I've never taken one apart. It must have had a battery of some kind inside. It just looked like a Sega Genesis cartridge otherwise. I got that long after the system was dead, though. I didn't get that at the beginning. I probably bought it at Funko Land for $1.
Yeah, and this site does mention there's newer kind of homebrew ones that are much bigger in memory.
Yeah. Like if you decide to play Popful Mail, you want to make sure you have the ability to save.
Yeah.
If you want to play that on real hardware.
My last note here was, what do you think the legacy of the Sega CD is? And my thing is, honestly, probably just Night Trap.
It's Night Trap, yeah.
That's it. That's really it.
That's it. I mean, Limited Run Games keeps making different variations of Night Trap, and people must be buying them because they keep doing it.
Oh, totally. Yeah. And like, I know I already said this, but the CD32X was such a missed opportunity. I know people make fun of it, and people made fun of the 32X when it came out, but that system was capable of playing something like, a Symphony of the Night. And if a game like that came out for CD32X, I mean, this would be a top selling, that would have been a game changer. No pun intended. Yeah. Or a Crash Bandicoot,
I've sort of wondered about that because I think the complexity of coding for that combination, like now that you don't, I mean, the reality is like this, when those systems came out, you basically had one Christmas season to get stuff out, or kind of two Christmas seasons, but no, because by 95, the system was really dead. So you really just had like Christmas time 94 to do anything like that. And if you don't have your game coded by September, it's not going to be on the shelves in time for Christmas season.
Yeah.
So like today, if I decided I want to spend the next 10 years writing a really impressive looking Sega CD 32X game, I could do that. And I don't have to worry about hitting a particular timeline. But there just wasn't time back then.
Yeah. I mean, you're pretty much learning two systems at that point. And so here's
kind of three. I looked at Sega CD programming, and that is not super easy.
Yeah.
It looks hard, and it looks hard to, without having a dev kit, it seems kind of hard, because where I got stuck looking at Sega CD program was like, okay, I can boot a Sega CD ISO in an emulator, but I also have to find a way to build that ISO in the first place.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
Right. Where the dev kit had some, like, I don't know exactly what it did. I'm assuming some kind of like RAM drive that emulated the CD. So you're running it through real hardware. It's just a whole different thing.
Yeah.
Also, I don't think I have a CD burner anymore.
Yeah. So you're not just compiling, you're compiling and burning.
You're compiling and burning into a virtual image and then hoping that it boots.
Yeah.
And you're basically having to put like your own OS on the thing. It's a whole bunch of like wow, this is a lot of work.
But the Sega CD 32X games were Corpse Killer, which I mentioned before.
Yeah.
Fahrenheit, never played that.
I have that. Yeah.
Slam City with Scottie Pippen.
Yep. Not very good.
Supreme Warrior.
Not good also. Oh, did you mention Night Trap?
Yep. Oh, did I? I don't know. There's Night Trap and there's Surgical Strike.
Yes.
And I don't know.
Wait, no. Surgical Strike did not actually exist.
Oh, it never came out?
Yeah, there was a thing. Was it? I have to look at it here. Surgical Strike. You bought the regular version, and then there was a mail away thing where like you could send your CD in, and they'd send you a 32X version, but it turns out it didn't exist.
That's awesome. And
whereas Fahrenheit, which I could grab the box, has like both CDs. You get both discs with the game. Which I thought was pretty cool of them. So I guess you could give one to a friend.
Yeah,
or whatever.
But
yeah,
I mean,
Surgical Strike was because that was the last Sega CD game at all, and it had it was some kind of mail-in offer to get the 32X version, but they never delivered on it.
Mm-hmm. The BC Racers game, I guess there's a 32X port too, but I don't know if it's CD or not. Like there might be a 32X port and then a Sega CD port, because there's a
32X port.
Okay, well there's a YouTube video where they put them side by side, and it's really incredible how much better the 32X port looks, and that just shows what you can do with the system if you know how to program for it. You know, a lot of these games, like does Night Trap look better on 32X? I don't know. You know, Scottie Pippen did that. You know, was it impressive for the time? I really don't think so. You know, so just a huge lost opportunity.
Oh, and before someone writes in, like I understand, like I believe the 32X version of Surgical Strike got a Brazil release because Sega systems lasted longer in Brazil than they did anywhere else in the world. Someone explained this to me once. It has to do with laws in Brazil that are very protectionist and prevent foreign companies from making hardware there. So the only company that could really sell games had some deal with Sega to manufacture Sega hardware in Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the systems lasted there forever. I mean, they had Saturn games like well into the 2000s being produced there. So they got the Surgical Strike for 32X. But the thing in the US, if you look at the box, it has this little sticker on the front that says free 32X version. If you lived in the US, you never got that.
Okay. Huh. Well, any final Sega CD thoughts?
No, we have a lot of feedback, so I kind of want to. We got a lot of people that have some good Sega CD experiences here.
Well, we still have Game Club to talk about. Do we want to do feedback or Game Club first?
Let's just kind of. Yeah, let's go through the Game Club stuff real quick, and then we'll do the feedback. Do it all together.
So yeah, let me start out here. I'm about to disappoint the listeners, which I'm sure they're not surprised about, but yeah, I did Sonic CD, and what was that? What year did that come out? 1993, and there are a lot of ports. It's easy to play this game, but back in the day, I did not play it because, well, I didn't own a Sega CD, but if I thought this was going to be a new amazing Sonic game, maybe that would have enticed me to buy it. But this suffered from the same problem as Doom 64 did for me, where I thought Doom 64 was just Doom, but on Nintendo 64. I thought Sonic CD was Sonic 1, but with maybe new like Red Book audio music. So I totally ignored it. And I mean, when are we going to get Sonic micro SD card? That's what I'm waiting for. Yes. Anyway, I think I want to like Sonic games more than I actually do. I think I like the 3D ones better. You know, I know when I was a teenager, I liked Sonic 1 and 2 a lot, but that kind of wore off and never really came back. Like I do enjoy Sonic Mania, but anyway, this game differentiated itself where you could time travel. There was past, present, future. And in order to get the good ending, you had to go into the past, explode the generators to get the good future. And then you also want to get all the coins in the Mode 7 like stage to get the time stone. by blowing up all the UFOs. The music is pretty great, how it changes in the past and the future. There is a totally different soundtrack between the Japanese and the US release. I think the Japanese songs are better. I know I think I am in the minority in that.
I think you're in the majority on that, actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
This does have the iconic Sonic Boom intro with that little movie with it. And I guess that was kind of cool. Definitely, for the time, it was very cool. And what else do I have in my notes here? There is a pinball mechanic that I do not think is very good. So yeah, I mean, there's parts in this game where you shrink. So, this kind of, and that didn't really do it for me either. So I kind of think this is the Bonk 3 of Sonic games. But maybe because you go, in time back and forth, maybe it's kind of the Link to the Past of Sonic games. I don't know. I know it sounds like I'm getting down on this game. I do like it. I think I'm just I need a break from Sonic games for a while. I like the movies. I do like the games, but I think I probably should have picked a different game for our Sega CD episode, something to be more excited for, because while playing it, I just kind of wanted to be playing your game. So what do you have to say about Sonic CD?
Yeah, I mean, I overall like the game. It's probably the one Sonic game I've played the most, but I've never finished it because I'm not very good at it. Any stages that involve water, I don't like, and I tend to not do well. And I agree with your feedback. Like, the casino stages look amazing. I think they're just beautiful graphics.
Totally, yeah.
But the pinball, the pinball mechanics are pretty terrible.
Yeah, I should reinforce that this is a beautiful game with an amazing soundtrack and sound effects. But sorry, go on.
Oh yeah. What was I going to say? So yeah, I mean, it's a game I usually play like the first 3 stages, and then I feel like I'm satisfied that I've played enough Sonic CD. That's about how I play it. I bought it. I just remembered this morning that way back when Android was like a new concept, I bought like a Sega Android game bundle. Remember like these humble bundles where you get a bunch of games for, a nickel?
Yeah.
It was like Crazy Taxi and Sonic CD and Sonic 4 and Choo Choo Rocket, right?
Yeah.
So a bunch of stuff like that. But they, because it was early Android, they just like gave you a download of the APK files directly.
Wow.
And then you just like put your phone in developer mode to play them.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how it used to work, because there wasn't, I don't know, they didn't know how to integrate with Google Store or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I still have all those, and I'm debating how I could play that version again. I think there's some stuff in that bundle that they don't even make anymore because it was for like Android 1 and they never ported it to whatever we're at now, Android 1000, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's also like it was a fan port that you can get today originally, right? It was someone did a fan recreation of Sonic CD, and rather than sue them, Sonic paid the guy, right? Sonic paid the guy. Sega paid the guy, not Sonic personally.
Sonic, it gave him some rings, yeah.
When you play Sega CD today, you're playing this fan remake. But it's a perfect remake, so I guess no one notices the difference.
Yeah, that's great. I love that Sega does that.
Yeah. So that's about all I got to say about Sonic CD. Great, beautiful game, great soundtrack. But yeah, I never played it too long.
Am I an idiot? Am I in the minority where when something was labeled CD or 64 that I just thought it was the same thing, but maybe just kind of a remake or new music?
Yes for CD, no for 64.
Okay.
64 I always assumed was like Super, right? So any game on Super Nintendo that got Super in front of it, I believe to be a sequel to a game. Which is really not the case for like Super Star Wars. This is where it gets confusing. Like Super Star Wars was just the same game you got on NES with better graphics. But 64, I always assumed that meant this is going to be a game you already have, but now polygonal.
Yep, exactly. Yeah.
That it's going to be a 3D. It's a new game, right? So it's a brand like Castlevania 64 is not Castlevania. It's a Castlevania game, but polygonal.
With Doom 64 though, I think that was different because that was kind of already 3D. I know that's
but that was a completely new game too, right?
Yeah,
I mean, that
exactly.
Was like new weapons, new stages. Whereas if I saw something called Doom CD, I would just assume that's Doom with CD audio.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
that's true. Because like Sonic CD's that NBA Jam CD, Joe Montana CD is a little different than the other Joe Montana games, but not very much. Most of them were just the same thing.
Sonic CD, totally new game.
Yeah, they should have called it something else.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder why they stopped there. Like I said, Sonic Micro SD card. Why didn't they create Sonic DVD and all that stuff? So I don't know.
Yeah, they should have just called it Sonic 4.
Yeah,
then there'd be no confusion.
Exactly. Yeah. But
wait, Echo the Dolphin CD was different. Was that different stages or not?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either. It had a sequel though that was on Sega CD that I think was different. Yeah, I gotta look that up. I think Echo might have been different stages.
Yeah, I think that's one of the few ones I own. But yeah, like with the TurboGrafx was great about that, where if there was a Who card and then a CD version, you just knew it was the exact same thing with music and load times.
Yeah. There weren't a ton of those. It was like Jack Nicklaus Golf.
Bonk 3.
Yeah. One of the Bombermen, maybe?
There
was not a lot. They didn't do that a lot in the TurboGrafx.
There was Airzonk and there was Super Airzonk, and I remember everyone likes Airzonk better. I forget if I think they're totally different games though, because of the Super, not the CD. You know.
Oh.
But yeah, want to move on to your game?
Yeah. So I did Sewer Shark, which unfortunately people can't really play online. I couldn't find a playable version. There's PC and 3DO versions also for it. I thought it was a pretty impressive game for the time. It maybe I think it gets a lot of disrespect, but I don't think that's really fair. It reminds me a lot of like an early Laserdisc game where it's like you have these really rich backgrounds, but the gameplay is very simple. So like, do you remember a Laserdisc game called Astron? Was it like Astron Belt? Is that what I'm thinking of?
I don't remember. No.
There's something called like Mach 3. These are like early Laserdisc games where the core of the game is really, really simple, but it has these digital, movie kind of backgrounds. So it looks way more advanced than it is. And Sewer Shark is kind of that, right? Because it's the video effects. Like you're not really navigating through a 3D environment. You're flipping between videos, and the shooting part of the game is pretty basic. You probably could have made it a light gun game. Well, of course, now that's like one more piece of hardware you have to hook up to your Sega Genesis, so
yeah,
that wouldn't have worked. So like I think in your notes you mentioned it's a lot like Descent, and I kind of agree with that, except you're not freely moving. And it doesn't give me motion sickness.
Yeah,
like
you don't need a barf bag next to you.
Every time I play that game.
Yeah, yep.
Descent is the worst. And I think maybe people didn't like the acting or whatever. I don't know. But Zach put a thing in the notes that this was directed by John Dykstra, who is a special effects person who worked on the original Star Wars and Star Trek movies. He worked on some Batman movies, Spider-Man, X-Men, and even some Tarantino films. So this was like a person with real experience making, making movies behind it. So I think it was a pretty good production. And, again, you kind of put yourself in the mindset of like 1992. There was nothing else like this. You could get it in your home.
And speaking of the movie aspect of it, really the tech part of it that impresses me is, so, like in Descent, you're going down in these tunnels, but there's like quick time events where you have to go, up, down, left, or right, or you'll crash into a wall eventually. What blows me away is the video animation when you turn, because it has to be that part of the video and turn, you know what I mean? And there has to be no lag time. They did a great job with however they did that.
They did, yeah, because it's definitely not rendering those backgrounds on the Sega Genesis hardware. Like you've seen how like Doom or Wolfenstein, I mean, porting those to Sega Genesis took years for people to get those to look fluid. So I think I'm positive that's all just video replay.
Mm-hmm.
Which is probably easier, but like you said, there's no load. Like even Dragon's Lair occasionally has a little bit of load time between the scenes.
And the characters, the acting, I liked the characters and the acting, but Falco, you're I guess she's your sidekick kind of.
Okay.
What's her accent? Because it's not New York, but it's not in New York. It's almost like there's a movie tough accent that existed only in the 90s, like how everyone in Starship Troopers talked.
I didn't see Starship Troopers, but I know what you're talking about. And yeah, it's something halfway between like New York and Boston kind of accent they're doing.
Yeah, and they always sound aggravated and tough. Yeah. The only other thing I had in my notes is the controls kind of took me a while to get used to. Definitely weird that you have to switch between shooting and turning. I felt like that could have been a little bit different, but that could be just because I'm used to modern games. But
yeah, it doesn't flow like a modern game. It's the turning. Yeah, it's almost again more like Dragon's Lair because you're really just triggering like which scene am I going to load next in the background, but it is also against a real-time shooter.
But you have to get out of shooting mode to turn, right?
Yeah.
Well, any last things to say about this?
No, I mean, this is obviously, I think anyone that owns a Sega CD has this. It became a pack-in for the system later on. So just about everybody has it. And I think it's way better than the Reputation. I think it's a pretty good game overall. Yeah,
I really like it too. And what are you going to play next?
So what am I going to play next? So I was just noticing on the list of upcoming anniversaries, a game turning 20 that maybe will make you feel old that this game's turning 20. And that is Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
That's great.
20. This is a game that feels like it's only 5 or 6 years old to me.
Yeah.
But is in fact almost drinking age.
Yeah. And it's definitely retro now somehow. And I'm going to do MediEvil on the PS1. It's a very Halloweenish type game. And so if any of our listeners play GTA Vice City, MediEvil, Sewer Shark, Sonic CD, if you have any Sega CD memories, and we don't have much more that we talked about this time, even though we've been talking a long time, please email us. Email at retrogameclub.net. That is email at retrogameclub.net. We have some listener feedback, but you could also get to our socials through everything that Zach does for us, which is our Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, all that stuff. We have a Discord, and which I pretty much just post stuff I've bought recently. But yeah, we have quite a bit of emails this time.
We do. Yeah, I'll take the first one. There's a little bit of non-Sega CD feedback mixed in here too on some of these, but overall this is mostly Sega CD. Majors writes in about the death of Stadia. It says, at least it'll look good in a convention next to the 5200 Jaguar and Nuon. He mentioned there was a similar thing in Japan called the Media Box. It was basically like a karaoke machine that had downloads, and there are some people who preserve those downloads, and you can still theoretically play games on it, like Space Invaders 95 and Puzzle Bobble. But I think Stadia, that won't be the case, right? There's no, like, once that's down, that's gone.
That's gone, yeah.
Turbo EverDrive Pro in mono mentions that when developing a new FPGA card for the TurboGrafx PCE and only supporting mono, but it makes them wonder, how did HuCard games like Dungeon Explorer run in stereo? Maybe it's some undocumented feature.
Good question.
Dungeon Explorer is stereo for sure. That is another very impressive soundtrack. Used games from Japan are equivalent to USA new in box. It's a comment. I think I covered our interview with Brendan. Made a comment that he's observed some gamers taking an interest to learn Japanese to play import RPGs, and that I have no interest in learning languages, but does know programming languages, does learning programming languages not count as learning new languages? And no, it does not. Like, I'll be really, like, you're talking about C++, right?
Yeah.
C++ has 20 reserved words you have to memorize.
Yeah. You just have to know what order to put them in.
And there's strict rules because there's a compiler. So it's not really, to me, like learning another language, because it's just, I don't know, 1% of what you have to learn another language.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're learning French and you have to learn like future imperfect tense or something, that's like just a complete mind-blowing experience to try and figure out. Like, I can read French reasonably well, but depending like the verb tenses, I often have to open up like a guide to, you know, verb conjugation to understand what a sentence is saying.
Yeah, and you don't have a compiler to correct you. You just have the person not knowing that you need to know where the bathroom is.
Right. I can't really like understand French. I definitely can't write it, but I can read it fairly well, which is maybe the first step towards being decent at a language. But again, yeah, you get stuck. Like, whereas, you know, if I were to look at C++ code, I haven't looked at C++ code in forever. I never have to like, wait, hold on. Does this statement mean X or Y? Like, it's pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
Although I guess German kind of works that way, is my understanding, that it's pretty.
German's pretty straightforward.
You know, I heard, sort of off topic, I heard a comment recently about how like spelling bees are a pretty uniquely American experience because every other language on earth is just phonetical. Like, a spelling bee in German just wouldn't make sense.
That's funny. Yeah.
Words are spelled exactly how they're pronounced. I'm like, yeah, that's a good point. But on to Sega CD memories. So he, like you, he had a Sega CD, a TurboGrafx CD when the Sega CD was launched, so he wasn't interested in it. He also worked at Babbage's at the game and could, you know, borrow games from the store to play at a friend's house who did have a Sega CD. And before the PS1 launched, Babbage's had a promotion where you could trade in Genesis or Super Nintendo and some games to get $100 off a PS1. And a customer brought in his Genesis CD and 32X, but the store only accepted the base Genesis. So he said, well, what am I going to do with this CD and 32X? So he just ended up giving them away to majors.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That is. I would have given him I would have figured some way to give him some credit. But anyhow, he mentions not being a big fan of the FMV games, but really enjoys Final Fight, Robo Elucidate. That's another, when I talked about Nerd Noise Radio, we talked about that soundtrack on there too. That's a awesome soundtrack. Soul Feast, Terminator, Flink, and Keo Flying Squadron. He ended up selling all of them a few years ago due to their high price, and eventually wants to get a Mega EverDrive Pro or something else to replace it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. We got Brian writing in. He picked up a Sega CD back at the Midwest Gaming Classic back in 2016 when the vendor hall was outside in a tent. And he got it complete.
That was great until it snowed.
I believe it, yeah. Which can happen any time of the year in that part of the country. Yeah, that year he got a Sega CD complete in box for $60, which is a crazy deal. His favorite game on the system is Silpede, which I think that's a popular choice. A lot of people like that one. His biggest memory of the Sega CD is a game called Lodestar. The Sega CD was a magnet for some old, odd games, and Lodestar was definitely one of them. If you've never heard of the game, you play as a space truck driver who drives a truck that's more like a train that's stuck on rails. And you have to shoot everything that's coming through to you as you're going through canyons and tunnels. And he says it's not the best playing game. Have you played that one?
No, I haven't. I'm familiar with it, but I haven't played it.
Yeah, I haven't played that one either. I think what stuck out the most for me it was truly the era of FMV cutscenes, and you even got some familiar faces like, who's that, Ned Beatty? Is that how you pronounce that? I don't know who that is.
He's a major actor. He was Dick Tracy, right?
No, that's
it's Warren Beatty.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh. Yes, I told you I don't know celebrities.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who that is. We got to do a quick Google.
Ned Oh, okay. Well, when you see his picture, you'll be like, oh yeah, I recognize that guy from many things, but I can't name a single role he was in.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He's one of those guys. Yeah.
Yeah, he's been in every movie in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
But Brian goes on to say, yeah, a lot of them were pretty much low budget and definitely cheesy, pretty much the definition of 90s FMV. Yeah, thank you, Brian. And I'll take this next one.
Okay.
French Pet, speaking of French, he writes in and says, without getting too boring with the socioeconomic backstory, Christmas is this time of year that him and his brother could convince his parents to get a new system or a 90s game, maybe for a birthday present as well. And one year they thought, hey, we could get a Sega CD. So when they got one for Christmas, if you don't know, northern Canada could get a bit hairy with a ton of snow, literally. And his brother wanted to take the Sega CD to a friend's house, and maybe it was the extreme cold or the vibration of a child climbing over massive snowbanks, but the thing broke. And it didn't work when he brought it back from his friend's house. So he returned it, got another one, and he didn't know what happened, but eventually that one broke. So they got a refund. With a little bit of time with it, he remembers playing a Sewer Shark, and it was cool, but he didn't understand what a bogey was or what 6 o'clock meant because, at that time you had like a digital watch and stuff like that. So he didn't know, of the analog version of that.
Yeah. I learned all that from B-17 Bomber on the Intellivision.
I believe it. Yeah. And, a distinct memory he had was at a neighbor's house before he had his own Sega CD Model 2. And the person explained what a CD was. He thought, wow, it's the future. You could play Streets of Rage with 100 levels instead of just 9. And nope, it's the same thing with just different music.
Yeah.
And
I honestly, I like Streets of Rage for a little bit, but I think that's a cool idea. Yeah, you could just fit so many levels on the disc.
mm-hmm.
It also sort of sounds like a form of torture to me because Streets of Rage, all these brawling games, get really repetitive after a while.
Mm-hmm.
And if you had to make me play 99 level Streets of Rage, ugh.
Yeah. And but yeah, he does remember playing Final Fight and maybe Time Gal, but he is not a fan of the Sega CD except for the startup jingle and maybe a few titles like Snatcher and Popful. But yeah, we didn't mention, I forgot to put this in the notes. The Sega CD start chime, I always thought was just strange and off-putting. That music, the da-na-na-na-na, it's just such a weird key, I guess. I don't know. It just didn't, it seems strange. It's really dark and I don't know. Compared to the PlayStation 1 or the GameCube one, it's just strange. But yes, Brian, French Pet, thanks for those emails.
I think the Dreamcast wins for best startup sound, but
I agree.
All right, Donnie G from the Gamers Week podcast says the Sega CD is one of his favorite consoles of all time. It's what his license plate says. It's one of his favorite games of all time, Night Trap. His friend was the first one to get it when it was released, and he remembers staying the night at his house and playing it many times. Sewer Shark was also unique as it offered constant action in between the cutscenes. He was never very good at it, though. But Night Trap totally captivated him because of the story and the traps used in the house. And, of course, to a young Donnie, the girls in the game were attractive. I think it's too low res, personally, but anyhow, the game was about precision and being in the right place at the right time to capture the augurs or to listen to plot points. And yeah, when I played through Night Trap, that was really it. We had a notepad and we just write down all the events, which camera, which time, because there's mandatory events like here's where you have to trap people, but then there's other parts where you start seeing the story. So
yeah.
He likes the Model 1 because of the sleek design and how it stacks. The Genesis kind of fits more nicely on it. And he says the Model 1 tends to fail at a very, very high rate compared to the Model 2. which I believe, again, you have mechanical parts, so anything that has mechanical could break. And also, you mentioned Sega CD has a great library and was definitely on the forefront of FMV technology. It just kind of gives us an idea of how advanced CD technology would be over, in future years. All right, thank you for that one. And do you want me to get the next one, or do you want to get the next one?
Yeah, could you get that one?
Yeah, sure. From Ollie. It says it's been a while since he's written, but wanted to write about the Mega CD. He has vivid memories of trying to get one. He and his brother were given a Mega Drive to share when it came out for Christmas. So when the Mega CD was due to come out, started begging their parents to get one. Since it wasn't too far into the Mega Drive's life, it was really expensive, and there was a lot of pushback from them. We thought we'd made a deal where we would do chores and be good in order for them to get it, but it turns out we were just going to be allowed to spend our own money to buy one, which was a crushing disappointment. Anyway, he did eventually get one and was not disappointed about its short life. He loved Cobra Command and Road Avenger. So Road Avenger is a kind of a Dragon Slayer style game, if I remember correctly. Which introduced him to his favorite composer, Moto Sakuruba, who is on like a million, it seems like, Sega CD and TurboGrafx CD games. Sonic CD, Jurassic Park's Shining Force CD, and Snatcher were all brilliant, and he still plays Final Fight often on it. Considers it to be the best edition of Final Fight. And again, being in the UK, they did not have Super Shark as a pack-in, but did rent it at some point, and really enjoys listening to Sonic CD today. There's a note on Zach put a note about streaming it. Oh, he streams these games on Twitch. He streams Sonic CD on Twitch, is what he's saying. We should probably include a link to his channel.
Yeah, we've got to find that, yeah.
Yeah, so thank you for that one. And last but not least, Super Retro 64 says about 20 years ago, his favorite game store had Model 2 Sega CD on the back bench behind the counter where they do repairs. When he asked about buying it, they said it works, but the door doesn't always latch. Okay. But they had several other units they hadn't tested yet. So I should take all those units home, test them, and keep the one that works and bring the rest back. This is all on the honor system, too. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So he comes home with the backpack overflowing with Sega CD systems and tests all of them. Not a single one worked. So I took them all back, and they gave me the one with the broken latch. It still works fine to this day.
That's awesome. That's crazy. I mean, that's a story of its time, isn't it? Like, that would never happen now. Yeah,
it's a mom and pop store, maybe. Yeah.
But then we got some social feedback about Sewer Shark. Raftronaut says this game was so painful to play, and his average session was 20 to 30 seconds.
That's not even enough to boot it. Come on. Day One Patch Kids, right, about Sega CD. They couldn't afford it. My friend had it when I came over to play it. I thought it looked ridiculous and cheap, but after a while, got really impressed with some games like Spider-Man versus Kingpin. And it sounds like he liked the cutscenes to that.
Yeah. So what do we got for next time? We have No, we don't. We just did Sewer Shark. We have GTA Vice City on the PS2, and we have MediEvil on the PS1. Or you could play, I guess, any of those remakes, right? There's a MediEvil on PS4, which I think might be free if you have PSN or PS Plus. And GTA, I think, is on pretty much every system, right? Vice City.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's on. I mean, at this point, because of the remake, it's on every system. And I was sort of debating if I'm going to play the remake, but if we record again in okay, let's do some math here. So I bought the remake, but I haven't installed it yet. So, okay, today is the 22nd. If we recorded, let's say, November 2nd, would the game be done installing and updating by the time we recorded?
That's definitely, you better start now. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's going to be tight. I'll probably just play one of the hundreds of other. I have it on everything. So
exactly. Yeah. Well, cool. I think that wraps it up.
Yes. So thanks for listening.